Hey everybody, this is Craig Garber. Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar. And today we have a really special guest with Joel Wilkens, Luthier of the Stars. Actually, he is Luthier of the Stars, but he's got a really great niche that he's developed for himself as far as working in vintage Gibsons and Fenders. He's been doing it a long time. He's really smart with it. We have a lot of mutual clients actually, and I'm really happy to have him on the show today. And he is a warrior, man. This guy's got one of the best stories that you're going to hear. So we're going to get into that. I just want to let you guys know that our merch store is open now. If you want to get some Everyone Loves Guitar gear or other cool music or guitar stuff, go to guitarmerch.com. And let's get into it with Joel. He is as I mentioned, excuse me, a well-respected luthier who specializes in repairing, restoring, and rebuilding vintage Gibson and Fenders. His client list includes Joe Bonamassa, Brian Ray, Laurence Juber, Alan Johannes, Philip Sayce, and loads of other players and artists, including the following people who were all previous guests here on Everyone Loves Guitar: James Nichols, Scotti Hill, Adam Zimmon. Isn't that guy like the funniest dude in the world?
I love Adam. He's awesome.
He's a great guy. Nick Perri, Artur Menezes, Josh Smith, Grecco Buratto, who's got like the toughest name I've ever heard. I was just like, the first time, the Grecco, I was like trembling, but he's such a lovely guy. Eric Bazilian, Bill Wittman, Eli Wulfmeier, Rich Hinman, and Jason Orme from Alanis Morissette. And Joel's been really kind. Joel put together a lot of these questions today, so I really appreciate that, man. Thank you, because
absolutely,
it was really kind of you, and I appreciate the insight you are going to transmit today. All right, let's get into it. Your parents owned a recording studio. Talk about that, and maybe talk about how that got you involved in music and ultimately guitars.
Oh, I mean, that could be a remarkably long story or a short one. It's up to you.
Cliff Notes version.
Well, my parents were living in Europe, and they moved over here maybe 69, 70, something like that, and jumped right into it with a recording studio, a live sound company, and some kind of audio distribution business as well, along with a partner. And, I don't really know what connections they had or whatnot, but they hit the ground running, and it was a serious operation. I mean, the studio was cool. That's kind of where I hung out. But I think probably more than anything, they were known for their touring sound company, which was called Big City Sound. It was a giant at the time, and they worked with, literally everyone. But I got to hang out at the studio with a bunch of cool musicians, and it was fun. I didn't know any different as a kid, so.
Yeah, that was That was the family business, sort of.
Yeah.
Where did your folks come from in Europe?
Another long story. My dad actually grew up in India.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is he Indian or English?
No, he's an American, but my grandparents, his parents, were missionaries or something to that effect. And they moved over to India when he was 3, 4. And he lived there until he wanted to go to college. And he came back to the States to go to college, and met my mom there. And I think my dad always felt out of place here in the States. It just was kind of a foreign environment. And as soon as they graduated college, they picked up and they went to Europe.
Wow. That's a really cool story.
Yeah.
Where did they meet in the States?
Chicago.
Wow, that's very cool. And where did they go back to Europe?
Where
in Europe did they live?
You're going to get the wrong idea if I tell you. Monte Carlo.
No, why? What's wrong? That's like a beautiful place, isn't it?
Well, yeah. They were probably the poorest people who ever lived in Monte Carlo. They were France had a state control over radio broadcasts into the country. So up on the mountain range, right on the edge of Monte Carlo, they have a whole bunch of radio towers that broadcast into France to get around the French government control of broadcasting. So there was, I think it was some sort of mission Christian-based radio station that was broadcasting out of Monte Carlo, and my dad, I guess, and my mom were essentially volunteering there. There was a brief period of time where they lived in England before that. My father was one of the, I shouldn't say first employees, but one of the initial batch of employees at Neve.
Wow.
Yeah. And he was an engineer there, and he designed, at least was part of the design team that created all these, crazy consoles and shit that people love. But I don't think they were there that long, maybe a year. They actually lived with Rupert's mom. And after that, went to Monte Carlo.
That's so he got into music through engineering, not necessarily through a passion project.
Yeah. He was an engineer. I think he played organ at one point in time, but I don't remember him being particularly passionate about music per se.
And he owned a successful recording studio, touring sound company. That's wild.
Yeah, yeah.
What a cool background. I think it's always good when you have relatives from foreign places. You get to learn a different spin on things. Your whole life is different, I think.
Yeah.
Which is cool. All right. So you were hanging out in the studio. At what point in time did you say, this is something I want to get involved with?
As I got towards my teenage years, I should back up a little bit. I started playing piano at 3, and not that I had any more talent than anyone else would. Like, just starting at that young an age, I became pretty proficient at it.
Yeah.
And some people started to take me seriously. So just like trying to figure out how to put it. There were a group of people around me who were trying to reinforce the idea of performance and music, and I hated it. I hated every aspect of it. The idea of getting up in front of people and playing music just terrified me. And every year, the typical recitals and whatnot, just not for me. But I very much loved music, and I loved the time that I spent in the studio, and that's really what I wanted to do: sit behind a console and mix. And my father was so vehemently against it.
Really? Why?
Yeah, I couldn't tell you. He never really went into it. They ended up closing their studio, I don't know, mid 80s. I might have been 10 or something like that. He remained in the professional audio field and had a lot of connections and whatever. And he could so easily have gotten me, into, somewhere like Sigma Sound here in Philly or whatnot to apprentice. He just refused. And I have no idea why. Never really got into it with him, but I was pretty bitter about it.
Yeah. I could. Why wouldn't you be? You know, it's like you have this
Yeah.
in thrill of enjoyment. You obviously had a natural aptitude and a good ear playing that young, and you're like,
Yeah.
hey, I'd love to get behind the glass. And your dad knows everybody with a Neve console, and he's like, nah, I'm not gonna. Yeah, I understand
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. I don't know why, but that's the way it was. And you didn't argue with my dad, so
Right.
that's how it was.
And I had a note here that said you were originally interested in working on classic or antique guitar restoration. Is that like, was that your plan B? Once you realize, hey, well, I know I can't get in, I'm not going to get help with this music stuff.
Car restoration, not guitar.
Yeah, antique car restoration.
Car, yeah.
Yeah.
I had an aptitude for fixing things. When my parents moved over to the States, they came with basically a sea trunk full of clothes and nothing else.
Wow.
So when they got here, you want something, you make it, you fix it, it breaks, it's on you, kind of thing. And that was us growing up. I mean, like, I think basically my first memory with my dad was building our first TV from like a Heath kit kind of
That's
thing.
amazing.
Building it, and yeah, and not being performance minded as far as music is concerned, and not getting into the technical side of it. I ended up buying a motorcycle when I was 14 that somebody had crashed, and it was sitting out behind the garage of somebody's house behind the school that I went to. And I paid $50 for it, and I had a friend throw it in the back of his truck. And over the next month, we took it apart in the back of his truck, took it down into my parents' basement piece by piece, because they would never have let me have a motorcycle, let alone, do anything with it. But I had a corner in the basement that was pretty well hidden, and I took the motorcycle down there piece by piece. And over the next year and a half, I rebuilt this motorcycle for, when I turned 16 and I could get my license. Of course, eventually they found it. You can't hide a motorcycle for too long.
Yeah.
But, I had no manual, no training, no nothing. I stole some of my dad's tools to work on it. I stripped it down to every single last nut and bolt and rebuilt the thing. It's like, okay, I guess I can do this. And there's a certain I don't think the right word for it. At the end of the day, having something physical to show for what you do, is meaningful to me. I've had a lot of jobs where you work all day and you have nothing to show for it. And what use is that, really?
Sure.
I don't know.
It's probably like writing a piece of music or going into the studio and putting a song together and then you're making something out of nothing. But I could easily see how tremendous sense of self-satisfaction out of doing that with a bike, where you rebuilt this whole thing from nothing with no training.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess that's sort of how I caught on to, I can kind of do this stuff, and it was sort of fun, and it was cheap. Cheap is a recurring theme. I got my first job when I was 11, and anything that I wanted, I had to pay for. So it was, and not my first car, which was a total piece of shit, but my second car, again, the same kind of story. It was something I'd driven by for years and years and years, and I thought it was a Ferrari sitting out behind this old gas station. It was covered in vines and leaves. It had been there for ages. Turned out to be a Volvo P1800, if you remember that car.
I know Volvo. I don't know the models.
It's unlike any Volvo you've seen. But it was sitting out there rotting, and I went into the gas station one day. I was like, what's up with that car? It was like, it's been sitting here for 15 years. The guy never pays for the work. And I tracked down the owner. I paid him, I don't know, $100 for the car. Spent another 6 months fixing it up, and there I have an antique car driving around. It's like, I can do this, and it's rewarding enough to pursue.
Was your dad's austerity driven, like, was that just, to whatever extent you're comfortable answering it, if you're even comfortable, do you think that was driven, like, that's just what his upbringing was, or was that part of the religious aspect? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, he grew up with nothing.
Yeah.
And again, you live on top of a mountain in India, you make it.
Yeah. Right. That makes sense. So he just didn't, that was his world. He didn't know any different.
Yeah.
Yeah. I get it. All right. When you were 19, and I appreciate you even mentioning this, because this is heavy. When you were 19, you had a motorcycle accident and you broke your back and your neck.
Mm-hmm.
And that led you to being in a wheelchair, to which you're still there today.
Mm-hmm.
So I have some questions on that. And again, thank you, because this is very kind of you to share this. How do you see life differently as a result of this, good, bad, or otherwise?
That's a tricky one.
Yeah.
In many ways, it's not the same life. In my particular position, I'm 2/3 of my body is paralyzed. So, when you wake up from that and you realize what's happened to you, you're starting from square one. And it's like you're an infant again. You have to learn everything over. And kind of everything that defined you as a person, or how you defined yourself prior to that, it's gone. Whether that was all the stupid shit that you make yourself out to be as a teenager. Whether that, some people that's girls, some people that's music, some people that's whatever, and it's all gone. Other than what's up here, hopefully.
Right.
And so yeah, you have to relearn everything. And I don't know. I'm just fortunate to have a couple of patient and loving parents who put me up for the next couple of years while I tried to figure shit out. Heal up and all that.
How do you think people see you differently?
That's hard to tell. I know for example, somebody's physically bringing me a guitar for the first time. They don't know I'm in a wheelchair or paralyzed or whatever. And I don't, it's not something I go out there and broadcast, right? And,
right.
Show up at the door and I'll get one of two responses generally. It's like, I'm looking for Joel. you know? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's gotta be,
Yeah.
yeah, that's weird. That's
Not that they mean it in a bad
of
way, but it's
course
like,
not. Yeah.
it's like and the then there's kind of the polar opposite. It's like, I I can't believe that you do all this. It's so amazing. It's this, it's that. And it's like, well, you know, it's harder, but I'm just a person like you, you know.
Right.
It's nothing amazing as far as I'm concerned.
Let me tell you, man, it is amazing because, and we've talked about this, but I want to air some of my thoughts on this. First of all, you said a few minutes ago something about you had gratitude that your parents helped you. Just I have so much respect for you that I mean, most people bitch about everything, fucking everything, you know. And I'm not one for complaining in general because, like, it's like the price of lettuce. Okay, what are you going to do about it, right? And when you told me you were in a wheelchair, I was blown away because you don't ever, that's not your platform.
Yeah.
And you don't complain. And quite frankly, if somebody had something to complain about, it could be you. And I told this story to you. I remember there's a guy on Facebook. He was bitching. I mean, he was outraged because someone didn't call him back, and he saw that person out on social media. And I thought to myself, what is wrong with this human being? This is what he's complaining about.
Yeah.
And so when, you know, I look at somebody like you, like, wow, man, I have all the respect in the world for you because your attitude is awesome. And you don't, you know, you said, like, you know, what am I going to do? I had to relearn this shit over. And, you know, you obviously have a lot of passion for living, man, because you don't, you know, you're focused on the good.
Well, I mean, at the time, it certainly didn't feel that way. And it's been 20 something years now. So it's, you know, the number one thing that kills people, you know, paraplegics in the first 2 years is suicide.
Yeah.
And it's a big adjustment, and it's a hump that you have to get over and figure out, you know, what the new mode of operation is, and what the point of your life is going to be, and, you know, all that stuff. So it's tricky.
Yeah. I mean, life's tricky enough without being in a wheelchair, man. I mean, it is, you know, it's like to the nth power when you have that added. And I have so much respect for you, and I really appreciate you sharing that. And I told you the story about my son, my middle kid, my youngest son. He's got mild CP. He was a premature baby, which is fairly common when you're premature. He was 10 weeks early. And he is my jock kid. You know, he loves sports. He could tell you, you know, every statistic of everything over the years. And he played sports. He ran track and field. He wrestled. He lettered in 4 sports, three sports in swimming, track and field, 3 sports in high school. And this is a kid who doesn't walk like, quote, normal kids. And, you know, unfortunately, when he was younger, he'd pick up on, and you see it when you're walking in the mall with him. When you have a physical disability, people often assume that you have a mental disability along with it.
Yeah.
And I used to pick up on that. And he said something to me when he was a kid. He was trying to do something. And I said, listen, man, you have to work harder. And I apologize. It's not fair. But people are looking at you and they're assuming you have some cognitive, you know, disability in addition to a physical one, because that's just how people are.
Yeah.
I said, so you're going to this is your extra burden that unfortunately, and man, I've heard him, he's 30, he'll be 30 soon. I've heard him complain about his legs like twice. And I'm like, you know, and I would trade places with him in a heartbeat if I could, but I don't need, he's living a great, you know, And you know, I have so much respect for people that deal with that kind of setback. So thank you, man. And
No,
you're
it's
like a hero to me, man. No, you are.
I mean, I think you figure out pretty quickly that you're not a fun person to be around if you're bitching, and it doesn't accomplish anything. And you know, the dialogue, as opposed to being out loud, is in here, and it still exists. And
Sure.
you know, I have shitty days just like everybody else, and you know, sometimes you gotta scream at the sky, and you know, it's not fair and all that, but that's everybody, I think.
Yeah, it is. But your attitude about it is so like my, you know, dude. You know, seriously, man. Like you should be giving motivational speaking to that guy who's upset because someone didn't call. How dare they not call him back on his time frame? You know, I don't.
Well,
get that.
For sure, it puts certain things in perspective.
Oh yeah,
no doubt about that.
Well, thank you, man. I appreciate you sharing that, and I hope people get clued
absolutely.
into. I hope people will listen to this and make an attitude adjustment for themselves. I have some notes here that said something about your background with respect to a few different things: college, professional writing, engineering, and programming. So if you want to talk a little bit about some of those things.
Yeah, in the first few years after my accident, it was a mix of things, trying to figure out, you know, what I could do, what I could do, which going into an office and working for 8 or 10 hours just isn't something I can do, right?
I hear you.
So looking at some available options and getting an education along the way, trying a bunch of things, seeing what I was good at, what I wasn't good at, what I hated, which was a lot of things. You know, I tried a bunch of different stuff, and those were all interests that I pursued, some longer than others, but yeah.
Did you like any of them? Engineering, programming, professional writing, or going to college?
Well, college was interesting in that it was a completely different experience than school. I did so miserably in school, and then did really well in college.
Why do you think that was?
I had a direction. I saw a purpose. It was coming out of my pocket. That always helps.
That always skin in the game is a big motivator. Yeah, man, I feel you on that.
Yeah. And the week before I had my accident, I met one of the most remarkable people I've ever encountered in my life. He was finishing maybe some postdoctoral stuff at Penn State, an astrophysicist.
Holy shit.
And he was
a literal rocket scientist.
Yeah. And he was friends with my girlfriend's roommate. And we all went out to dinner one evening, and just the nicest guy in the world. Very cool. Happened to be into motorcycles just like I was. So we hit it off, and we talked about all things vintage motorcycles for the next, 6 or 8 hours or whatever. And then a week later, I'm in a motorcycle accident, and I get a note from him maybe 2 months later, I'm, really sorry to hear about, your accident and whatnot. If there's anything I can ever do, give me a ring. And what turned out, he was really more interested in engineering than astrophysics, and was designing an engineering race motorcycles. And he really encouraged me to look at engineering. He thought I had the sort of disposition for it. And so that's kind of what I started pursuing in college. But I think what made his involvement in my life at that point in time so meaningful was that he was, literally a stranger, right? But he was taking time to, in essence, mentor me.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways. And your friends and your family will do anything for you, but to have a stranger who has no skin in the game, take an interest and a belief in you, that was profound in my life at that point. I didn't really have much belief in myself.
Yeah.
So, for someone to go out of their way meant a lot.
You still in touch with him?
I eventually got in touch with him again. We lost track of each other for 17, 18 years or something. He ended up being much higher up in motorsports and difficult to get in touch with. So, but yeah, eventually tracked him down, and I got to say thank you.
That's awesome.
And that's what I needed to do. So it was good.
Well, also because of how you grew up with, you want something, do it yourself. There, nothing against your parents, but that puts a barrier that closes you off to help in a sense. Because I had that, man. So I'm speaking of experience, not like judgment. And so when someone does take an interest in you, I know with myself, it's almost like there's a sense of undeserving to some extent. Like, oh, why would you? Because you're not. I'm just supposed to do everything myself. You know? So I totally get that.
Definitely a lot of that. And at that time, I was in a place physically where I had to ask for help from so many people, and it was so uncomfortable for me to do so.
Yeah.
The thought of having sort of mental and emotional support on top of that from so very foreign,
Sure.
what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
But it was very necessary, and it got me in a good headspace. It got me going in a direction, and I learned a lot of skills which I would end up applying to Luthier. So it was a good thing all in all.
That's cool. Are you good today about asking for or accepting help or receiving help?
Oh, no.
Oh, really?
No. When I need it, I ask for it, but good. I do my very best to make sure I don't need it. You know what I mean?
I do. I do.
Yeah. No, I mean, my parents ingrained in me that you are independent. Not necessarily that you are alone, but you are responsible for yourself,
Which is true. Ultimately, you are responsible for yourself. But that, there's no man is an island, though. That's the problem. You gotta have freaking help, man. You can't get through life on your own. I learned that the hard way too. So, well, thanks for sharing that. That's cool, man. That was a good story, and I'm glad that guy came in your life. All right, now let's talk about how'd you finally get into repairing guitars, and how did you specifically get into the vintage Gibson and Fender niche?
Well, fixing guitars was one of those things I thought I could do from essentially a kitchen table, as a way of making some money.
Okay.
And I was in some bands when I was a teenager, and I was working on some guitars. I didn't really know what I was doing, but I knew better than my bandmates, right?
Right.
So I had a little experience, but at the time, and this would have been what, 97, 98, eBay was still pretty much in its infancy. And you could get good deals on things, so
on vintage guitars.
On any guitars, really.
Yeah.
Anything that was broken, anything that needed fixed up. It was cheap. It was all over the place. I bought up tons of guitars at the time. And, I basically taught myself what to do, how to do it, and with a lot of experimentation. But with a mindset, having gotten into, some of the more thinking as an engineer, I guess, looking at a problem, working your way backwards from it. I had to figure out things like finishes, glues, all these things that you would learn as an apprentice somewhere. I kind of had to figure out on my own, trial and error. And that's part of the fun of it, the challenge of figuring something out.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's just, I don't know, a job.
What was it, if that you can remember, best deal that you had, or like most surprising or exciting? I bought this for this, and I turned around and sold it for that.
There was a company that auctioned off FedEx and UPS damaged delivery items.
Okay.
And there was a lot, maybe 8 or 10 guitar cases. They didn't show what was in them, whatever. I think I probably paid $100, probably $400 or $500 to ship it. And it was a stack, literally a stack of PRS guitars, which all pretty much had minor damage on it. I made a boatload of money off that really easily. It was lovely. But
just from taking a gamble, really.
Yeah.
It's like those guys with that show on TV with the storage units, kind of.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's cool, man. Good for you.
Yeah, that was long ago and far away. You don't find deals like that. Not honestly, not that I've looked since. I don't know that I've been on eBay since the year 2000.
Yeah, I hear you.
But
that's cool, man. So how did you fall into the vintage niche?
Well, luthiers don't get paid particularly well.
Right.
Let's start with that. Which, honestly is pretty unfortunate. For someone to get good at this job takes years. And just like you know, as opposed to, I don't know. I think there's a serious underappreciation for work that is done by hand, as opposed to, you know, everything is college and information and computers, and you know, that's great, and I'm sure that's wonderful stuff. But you still need a plumber to come to your house, you know.
Yes.
Somebody to change the, you know, roof out, fix your car, you know, all those sorts of things. And it's the value of somebody's physical labor, I think, is underappreciated. And I think the amount of time that goes into learning a craft like this is underappreciated. And unfortunately, I think the pay reflects that,
Yeah.
you know, generally speaking. And my idea and my interest, honestly, just because I like the guitars, if you get into a specific field of instruments that are more expensive, take more time, more of a detailed eye and hand, than, you know, say the Fender Squire or whatever. It's not that it's a bad guitar, but you know, one takes more attention than the other. You know, I was assuming that the pay would be commensurate with the work.
Yeah.
And I was mistaken, but I still love the guitars, and you know, it is what it is.
Yeah. Do you think some of that's a reflection of just like the what every musician is experiencing in the industry today?
Well, I think if you can afford $100,000 guitar, you can afford to pay somebody to work on it.
Dude, right on. I'm gonna, let me just write that down because that's magic. Give me 1 second here, because I agree with you. Do you have people coming in that own $100,000 guitars bitching about what your fees are?
Oh yeah.
Do you want to out them like right here? Because that's disgusting, man. That is like fucking, because you know, you're not buying $100,000 guitar because you're paid minimum wage, and presumably whatever you're doing is an elevated service or deliverable, and you're getting good. I hate people like that, man. Like there's certain, like they're the only ones entitled to get paid. Yeah. I hate that, man.
And you know, in fairness, that is not the majority of the people I work with. Yes, but there are those people out there. You know, I find the people who are most, shall we say, enthusiastic about paying are the ones who work hard jobs and understand the correlation of you know, work, money, time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't get. Maybe because I've always been in the service business, but to me, like, I want someone to, if I'm hiring somebody in the service, I want them to feel that they're getting compensated fairly, because I want them to do good for selfish reasons. I want them to do good work, you know?
Yeah.
And also, I think I drove a cab for a while when I was a kid, and that really teaches you, like, a couple of bucks extra out of my pocket doesn't mean anything near as much a couple of bucks extra going into that individual's pocket.
Yeah,
you know?
For sure.
So I always kept that in mind, but man, that pisses me off.
You know, I'm not trying to bitch. It is what it is.
Yeah.
You know, it's, if you sit down and try and justify the difference between, all right, I have to do a fret job on an Epiphone or a Squire, a $300 guitar, you know, it's going to cost a couple $100.
Right.
How is that materially different than doing a fret job on a $50,000 guitar? It's not. You take a lot different precautions. The facilities are different. You know, the cost that I bear for security, having these kind of instruments around. You know, the average person working on a guitar doesn't need to worry about those things.
Right.
Um,
Just the level of responsibility, though.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I get what they're saying as far as, well, it's no different, but it really is. Then, you know, my response to that would be, as a sales guy, I would say, you know what? I agree with you. You should bring that down to the local Sam Ash. And they were like, oh, I would never do that. Well, then guess what? You know?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that's ridiculous. All right. So I'm going to mention some Luthier related topics.
Mm-hmm.
And these are topics you gave me. So thank you so much for helping me with content, because this is going to be really cool. The first question is the only original question I have. How many guitars do you think you've worked on since you started doing this? Ballpark.
Certainly in like the first 10 years or so, you know, you'd work on 2 or 3 guitars a day. You know, it was kind of easier jobs. You know, it's anything from restringing a guitar to fretwork or changing pickups, you know, something easy stuff. And then as you get into restoration, you know, this year I've probably had a total of 7 guitars.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So 7,500 to 10,000 in the first 10 years. And as you move into restoration and higher job skill sets and more precision, that obviously goes down, and hopefully deservedly so, getting paid more for each of these.
Yeah. That one number seemed remarkably high, but 2 to 3 guitars a day for 5 days a week, 10 years, maybe.
Yeah.
You're probably better at math than I am.
Well, I just threw a quick stab at it. What is, for me and for everybody listening, what is specifically, when you say restoration, what are you referring to?
Well, that could mean a lot of different things. Generally, what I see will be a guitar which was, you know, purchased in the 50s. Somebody's kid in the 70s got a hold of it, stripped the finish, took a flathead screwdriver to the pickup cavity so they could stuff some humbuckers in there. You know, it's been through the ringer, and needs to be fixed structurally, aesthetically, you know, original parts or very good facsimiles, you know, acquired, yes. And, you know, put back to make like it was 70 years ago, hopefully.
Yeah. You had something here about helping musicians understand their instrument. What do you mean by that?
My job is a lot easier, and the end result of a guitar in their hands is going to be a lot better if they understand at least some of the parts and the functions, and, you know, how does a truss rod work, you know, those kind of things. You know, what is relief in a neck, what are typical string heights, pickup heights, you know, some pretty basic things that go a long way to understanding how a guitar should be set up, how it changes the feel and the sound. And I'm always a little bit surprised by how, you know, if you're making your living through this instrument,
you should know something about it.
A little bit, a little bit. It'll go a long way,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think. But I'm looking at it from a biased perspective. I don't know.
I don't think that's unreasonable. I mean, the things that you mentioned, you would think those are basic things. And if you're dealing with a 19-year-old, you give him a pass or her a pass. But
yeah, if somebody's been in the business 20 or 30 years,
yeah,
you hope that they've learned something along the way.
yeah,
And I understand somebody not wanting to get their hands dirty, with a really expensive instrument, but being able to communicate with whoever's working on the guitar, what the problem might be. I think it ends up better for everybody.
yeah,
honestly.
totally. You had something here I wanted to explore about facilities and logistics of running a business, because I know that's a
Yeah, I mean,
difficult thing.
you're an entrepreneur, and I would hazard a guess that most people who get into lutherie started out as guitarists,
Yes.
weren't going to be, they figured out at some point in time that they're not going to make it as a guitarist, and kind of turn to working on instruments so they can, stay in the business or business adjacent.
Sure.
I don't know that musicians always have the best head for numbers.
Yeah. It's a literal blind spot. It's just apples. It's just not something they like.
I'm not a musician, and I'm still not good with numbers, so I don't know. It's something you have to put a lot of thought into. Facilities costs, insurance. What are your liabilities, and that is probably not a big deal if you're working on some low end instruments, but if you get into some really expensive stuff, that becomes a big concern.
Yes. Do you ever have an unexpected accident?
Thankfully, not yet.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
I've gotten better as I've gotten older, but I used to be super clumsy. And if I could just see like myself as if I was doing what you're doing it like 25 years ago, like just dropping shit.
Yeah. The dollar signs that surround these instruments keeps you focused.
Scare you
for
into
sure.
not, yeah.
It seriously, when you have a guitar in your hands that's worth more than your house, it's like, this is real.
Yeah.
So
talk about collaborating with artists on products.
Well, I don't think a lot of people on my side of the musician luthier equation quite understand the musician's point of view, as far as their name, what they bring to the table as far as their ear and their experience, and that's not always tangible, easy to see and recognize. So it can be a unique experience, trying to two individuals who may not be all that good at business, are probably pretty independent and are in very different fields, trying to come together and collaborate on one thing and make it work and make it viable, make it profitable. I've seen it go sour a lot. I've only done it once, and it was a great experience for me.
Talk about it.
But did a signature line of pickups with Philip Ace.
Great
and
guitar player.
Yeah, and it, aside from some hiccups, COVID related in shipping and getting materials and stuff like that, which was a nightmare. It was fantastic, and but it took Philip and I, literally, we talked on the phone 1 hour every week for a year to get to a place where we were both comfortable with the process and each other, and just kind of figuring out what to do. Neither of us had done this before.
Yeah.
It's an entirely different thing, and you definitely have to build trust and respect, and on top of developing a product, which is something different as well. So it was a really interesting learning experience for me. I'm not sure I'm the best person to be giving advice to anybody about it, but
no, you're just sharing your experience.
Yeah.
I know you're going to be coming up with a line of pickups or lines of pickups, let's say sometime next year. Will that be one of them?
Another with Philip Ace?
Well, just will you be selling that line of pickups?
Oh, what we collaborated on was a limited edition of pickups.
Right.
So that actually sold out in like under a minute.
That's so cool. Good for you, man. Congratulations.
Yeah, it was not what we were expecting, but it was very cool. And then I had a lot of pickups to make right away.
Sure.
But it was all good.
I'm thinking you need to add some vitamin C and come up with a second round of those, man. And when I say add vitamin C, I was in supplement business for a while, and you had a good product. One of the things you could do to modify it was add something. So it was like, oh, these come with vitamin C, So nice. I think you need to add vitamin C and make a round 2 of those, man, if they sold out that quick.
I like it.
Yeah. See, that took about 8 seconds. We got it good.
I think I've found a new product manager here.
I don't know about that. You're far better than me, but that's good. Congratulations, man. I'm really glad that happened.
Thank you. Thank you. Really cool. It was a lot of fun, and from all the feedback we've gotten, everything has been positive. So, hooray.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I want to talk specifically now about vintage guitars. And again, thank you for putting all this together. It was very thoughtful of you. Why is there such a hype around vintage guitars? Because to me, like, I don't have that hype. Like, to me, I would look at a guitar like that and its maintenance. I'm not that guy. Yeah. They're beautiful, and I've talked to tons of other guys. I think you probably know Keith Nelson, loads of Nick Perri, guys that vintage Gibson guys, and I love their guitars. Do you know Dave Amato?
I know the name.
God, he's a guy I got to get you with. He's got 50 Marshall Plexis. God knows how many guitars he has. But so these guys love it, and I admire their stuff. Me personally, it's not a thing. But why do people get so horny or like excited? It is because it's like, it's like horny for like an old vintage guitar.
Well, I mean, some of it has to be nostalgia for the bands. The instruments that the bands you loved growing up, or whatever. Led Zeppelin used this guitar, that kind of thing. So I mean, that certainly had to be the genesis of some of this.
Sure.
Part of it is that there are a select number of vintage guitars which sound so good, are such phenomenal instruments, that, you know, they end up in the hands of good musicians, real musicians. And of course, we all want to emulate our heroes, and we want to sound like them and whatever.
Totally.
So, you know, let's say there's 10% of the vintage guitars out there are really wonderful instruments. There's probably another 40% which are good. And then the latter half, which, you know, you shouldn't even pick up and play. But on an auction on Reverb, you don't know which one of those it is.
Right.
And it is in nobody's interest inside the industry to talk about that. You know, every vintage instrument is a wonderful instrument. It's old wood. It's, you know, because that keeps the machine running, right?
Yeah, totally.
But yeah, I mean, truth about it is, you know, just like going into Guitar Center and picking up a whole bunch of Les Pauls, you're going to find one that's nice and a whole bunch that aren't that great.
Right.
And that's true vintage. It's true new guitars.
Would you say the percentages are the same for new guitars? 10% excellent, 40% good, 50% bad?
Honestly, I have a lot less experience with new guitars than I do old guitars. But
okay,
from what I hear from people, it's like they go and they pick up 4 or 5 guitars, and, you know, one is playable, and the rest should be sent back.
Wow.
You know?
God. What are the pros and cons of owning vintage instruments?
Well, it's a lot of money. And what do you get? What do you get for that money? You know, if everything is going to cost more on it, you know, when I get, you know, let's say a 50s Telian that has a maple fretboard, and they want the finish to remain very much intact, the dirt and the grime to be maintained. So, you know, I pull the frets on that. It's going to take me 3 or 4 times longer to do that carefully.
To keep everything
looking ancient and dirty and disgusting. Keep the DNA on there.
Yeah, that's good how you said that, the DNA.
And that can be, you know, kind of applied across the board. It's going to be rusty parts. It's going to be finish that's flaking off. It's going to be pickups that die. It's going to be tuners that don't work particularly well. There's going to be a whole lot of things on that guitar that aren't great, unless it's been very well maintained. But, you know, even then, you play the guitar, you have to maintain it. You know, the trade-off can be a really excellent instrument. You know, the quality of the materials back then was across the board better. It doesn't mean every guitar is great, but you have a better chance of finding a, you know, that 1 in 10 vintage guitar is going to sound better than that 1 in 10 new guitar.
Gotcha.
You know, hands down. So there is magic there. They aren't making it up, but not all of them.
What is the coolest or like rarest? You don't have to tell me who, but what is like the rarest or most, I don't want to say most expensive, but just in your opinion, the guitar that had the most magic vintage that you've come across? And magic as to whatever you define magic as. That's a very individual thing.
You know, honestly, they're you're kind of asking me to choose which is my favorite child.
Yeah, I get it. I totally.
Well,
Yeah.
once you have a guitar for 6 months, 9 months, you're personally invested in it, and I love these instruments and whatever. So they become a part of me. So asking what my favorite is. It's
Asking who your favorite child is. That's tough.
yeah. There are two that stick out. One is Terry Reid's Telecaster, if you're familiar with that. Joe Bonamassa owned it for a while.
Terry Reid was that a black guy that played? No, who's Terry Reid? Why do I know that name?
He's a British guy who was doing his thing in the 60s, and his story is actually really fascinating. I'm not the person to tell it, but he was like always on the cusp of making it really big. Like he was asked to be the singer in Led Zeppelin, right? And he turned it down. And singer in Deep Purple, he turned it down. That kind of stuff.
Did he have one hit that someone else covered that made it really big or something like that? There's a reason I know that story.
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. But I'd never heard of him. Joe calls me up and he's like, I've got this guitar that is so fucking cool. You will not believe it. And, belongs to Terry Reid. I was like, I have no idea who this guy is. And started listening to his music. I was just blown away. The guy has a voice unlike anything you've ever heard. It's magic.
Is he still around or is he passed?
He is.
Oh, dude, I got to see if I can get him on the show.
He's a character. Yeah, that would be an interesting conversation. I'd love to hear that one.
So his Telecaster, Joe calls you up. Joe had it.
Yeah, and he's like, it had some work done in the 80s or something like that, and I want to return it to what it looked like in 1971. There's a video on YouTube of I guess the first Glastonbury festival.
Okay.
Where Terry is up on stage playing, and it looked 70 years old at that point.
Wow.
But yeah, it's like we got to get it looking original again and playing good and whatever. That guitar is amazing. Everything about that instrument is amazing. The feel, the sound, everything. That as far as I'm concerned, that's about as perfect as a guitar gets.
Now, does Joe still have that guitar?
He just sold it.
Okay.
To another friend of mine. Fortunately, good guy, and hopefully I'll see it again one of these days. But
that's cool.
Yeah,
that's like a blessing and a curse. Hopefully I'll see it again. Means like, it's like when I went to the doctor, I had some surgery. I'm like, man, you're a great guy. I hope I never see you
never
again.
see you again.
Yeah, man, not in this context. You said there was two. So Terry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, one is definitely the Terry Reid Telecaster. The other would be the guitar that I just finished a little while ago for James Nichols. It was 1952 Les Paul. That was destroyed in a tornado. And it was given to him by a fan and then given to me to repair. And it turns out it's one of the very first Les Pauls ever made. It has some really unique features on it. It's really cool. And I had the distinct honor of putting that one back together. And it's wild. I don't get all spiritual and weird about these things, but that guitar, it talks. It's weird.
Did it have P90s in it?
Mm-hmm.
Well, tell me, you know what? I could see why people come to you, because as soon as I started asking you about these specifics, your whole vibe, it didn't shift, but it like your energy level, like just jumped up very noticeably. So it's really cool to see that. You can see you're passionate about these instruments. Tell me about those P90s, because I got to tell you, I just got that Eastman there. I originally bought a Les Paul Special. It was a newer one, and as such, it was kind of a piece of garbage, and I couldn't never get it working for, the bridge, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so a bunch of guys in my show had said, hey man, check out Eastman. So I bought it, and they have these Lawler P90s. I don't think I will ever play anything but Lawler P90s again. They're just amazing. Yeah. How did those P90s sound? Because this P90 is a magical thing, man.
Yeah. It's, they only get better with age.
Wow.
It's, I'm the worst person at describing a sound or a tone or a quality, other than to say that there is no guitar out there like, it's named Dorothy, for obvious reasons, and especially in Jared's hands. It's a stunning instrument.
I don't know how that guy plays so fast without a pick. It blows. That literally blows. I've never seen anybody play that fast without a pick. And I've seen tons of guys play without picks, but not like that. He's pretty amazing.
He is. And a wonderful guy.
Yeah. Yeah. He was a good guy.
So those are my two picks.
The 52 Les Paul and the Terry Reid. Talk about I'm laughing. I want to get your take on this, man. The YouTube social media vintage phenomenon. God. I know, man. It's part of that is our age, because anything that's on, it's just like it's a shtick that we are not from. And I'll tell you what's really interesting. My two older kids, my sons, they're 31 and almost 30. My daughter's 21. Even between those two, the age gap, my older ones are like, man, thank God I didn't grow up with Sam's age, because my daughter, I remember when she was like 11 or 12 years old. So this is 10 years ago, maybe 15. I walk in the room one day, there's 4 girls, they're all on their phones talking to other people. And I'm like, why'd you guys come over? I mean, like, didn't you used to go hang out at your buddy's house, or they come to your house, to hang out and talk with them? No, and that's totally normal. So I think, in all fairness, some of this is that some of our mutual of this phenomenon is because we're older and it's not our thing. But I'd love to hear your take on it.
Well, I think there's some really good aspects to it, and I think there's some really bad aspects to it. Fair enough. Full disclosure, I have some friends and clients who are, doing this YouTube thing with guitars, and, God bless them.
Yeah.
But I think in the way that girls are having a really hard time with social media and bullying and body image and, all the things that come along with that, I think guys are getting it in a different way, with, you have to have the Lamborghini, or the 59 Strat, or the, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. I don't, because it's like I don't subscribe to that, but I do know what you mean, because people, there's one of the number one things with people, I've had 850 guests on this show, so that's not a giant, but it's a pretty good population of musicians. And the number one thing most musicians struggle with, and I think that can be extrapolated to people, is they want to make other people happy. Mm-hmm. This feeling of, wanting to be liked, and not wanting, it's more than that. It's not wanting to disappoint somebody. Mm-hmm. And I think that contributes to that. Like, you want to be liked, accepted. I have and part of the perceived route to that with what you're talking about is by having the 59 Strat or the 50, 58 or the 52 Les Paul. Yeah. And it's weird.
I mean, it presents a certain it's sort of commercialism and capitalism and, sort of taken to a crass level at times. But I think also the effect on the people who are presenting this can be pretty toxic.
Mhm.
You know, having to worry about likes and followers and comments, and you know, it's I think it can all be rather unhealthy if not put in check from time to time.
I agree with you. I think it can be, and I think it's important that people go in. I think it goes back to, why are you doing something?
Yeah.
And because I study a lot of YouTube from a business aspect, and the people that are crushing it now, they're not doing anything I would do. I don't even understand most of it, to be honest with you, but they are being sincere. And those seem to be the people that do well. So I think if you're going into something being disingenuous to yourself, it's a bad move from the get-go.
Yeah.
So I agree with you there.
I mean, I've noticed, you know, some people who've gone into it with the right motivation and the right ideas, and you know, certain pressures, either be it in order to make money or whatever, to constantly push themselves beyond what they're comfortable with for whatever reason, into a bad mental place. You know, it's sad to see.
Yeah, it is, man.
But you know, I don't. Pros and cons.
Yeah, totally. I get it. I know we can't talk about this too much. It's almost as bad as talking about politics, man. I know it's such a it's just a negative spiral, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Fake instruments.
I started seeing a lot of fake Les Pauls in the 90s when the values on those started skyrocketing. And you know, I'm sure dealers and whatever saw a lot more than I did. But you know, it's scary, and it's, you know, somebody comes to you and they've spent a lot of money on a guitar, and you know, at times it's not even a good fake, right?
What is a giveaway?
They're, you know, depending on who made it and how, they can be really convincing or they can be pretty shitty. But it's on the really, really good fakes where like every detail is correct. You always get a feeling. It's not any one thing that you recognize on it necessarily to begin with, but you look at it and you don't get the right kind of feeling from it. And you know, that puts that seed of doubt in there, and you really start digging, and you know, eventually there's something that gives it away if it's fake, or something that definitely proves that it's original if it is.
Yeah.
But you know, sometimes that's hours. You know, and you can't really expect the average person to know all of those details. I mean, there's a lot of information out there these days that there wasn't in the past, but that also makes it a little bit easier for people to fake those things.
Right.
So,
well, the other thing is, and you get one, what is your, so if somebody wants to buy a Les Paul, or not even a vintage Les Paul, something that's, you know, 2004, a classic, or somebody wants to buy a mid 90s reissue of a 62 Strat.
I say buy from a reputable dealer.
Okay.
And that they have a good return policy in place. Preferably play the damn thing. Have it in your hands first. Check it out. When you buy it and you take it home, get it to somebody for a second opinion if you have some doubt about it.
Yeah.
You know, particularly with a vintage guitar or whatever.
Yeah.
But you know, even even my clients who buy from very, very reputable places, they don't question the integrity of these places. They want another set of eyes on it to make sure that everything is perfect. It's not that they doubt the first person. It's just, layers.
Yeah.
Layers of protection.
You ever have a situation where you got a guitar that was a fake, but the guy was an asshole, so you didn't tell him?
No, I haven't done that. I think you get more enjoyment out of telling them that it's fake, right?
Right on, man. Yeah, that's a good point.
But no, it's heartbreaking to tell somebody.
I can't imagine that, man.
Yeah, just be like, yeah, you just dumped $10,000 out the window, and there's no recourse. It's like, oh Jesus.
How many have you seen? Let's say in the last 30 years.
Fakes.
Yeah.
Actually come to me, not that many.
Okay.
Maybe 7 or 8. Which, is 7 or 8 more than there should be. But,
sure. Mostly Gibsons or Strats?
At one point in time, it was Les Pauls mostly, just because they were the most valuable instrument out there. Now the thing is, early Telecasters. It's because they're so easy and they're so cheap to make. Les Paul actually takes some skill.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, there's a lot of workmanship involved in that. Yeah.
Yeah. Telecaster's easy. So
wow.
Yeah, there are a lot of those floating around these days. So, beware.
Want to talk a little bit more about gear. Talk about guitar maintenance. What is like the 3 biggest mistakes, let's say, people make with their guitars and not maintaining them?
Not having their guitars properly maintained.
Which includes
oh God. I mean, on vintage guitars, certainly I think our biggest concern is rust. If you're sweating and oil from your skin and hand and all that stuff conspires to kill a vintage guitar. Rust the saddles up, kill the pickups, all those sorts of things. So yeah, having a guitar gently and carefully maintained along those lines is a very good thing.
Like, how often would you advise that for people that have vintage guitars?
I think my advice for anyone with a guitar, especially if you live somewhere that's sort of seasonal, is like every 6 months, there's enough of humidity, temperature changes and whatnot to get your guitar, properly looked at. Particularly a musician, again, who needs a reliable instrument, that kind of thing, possibly more often. But, hopefully most of them have guitar techs that are looking after their guitars,
sure.
on the road and stuff like that.
So here's something funny that I'm embarrassed, but I'm going to tell you. My 335 is my favorite guitar of all the guitars I ever.
It's a nice looking guitar.
Thank you. I really enjoy it. It's special to me. And I haven't played it in like 6 months because the strings are so old and I'm afraid to change them. So because it's going to take me like an hour and a half it's just a long time, so I have to get a proper video on Google how to change, I could change strings on a regular guitar, but that's tough enough. But it's
Bigsby's are no fun.
That's the problem. Yeah, man.
Yeah.
That's the problem for an average idiot like me. It's just not something, It's just product quality improving or decreasing. What do you think it's going?
Both.
Okay.
I think the higher end stuff is possibly not as good as it used to be, and the lower end stuff is so much better than it used to be.
Interesting. Do you have specific either brands or story or something or observations?
Well, Epiphone, for example, maybe 15 years ago, you'd hesitate to pick one up because it's going to be a pretty crappy instrument. But now they are, as far as fit and finish and materials and so forth, they maintain their affordability with cheaper parts, like bridge, pickup, tuners, that kind of thing, which can all be changed out and upgraded and whatnot. And you can end up with an instrument that rivals a Gibson counterpart for a fraction of the price, just by upgrading it.
And you particularly like the Epiphones?
I'm just using them as an example. I mean, there are a lot of brands. I haven't seen an Eastman, but I hear good things.
Yeah,
it's not a cheap guitar, but it's more affordable than what comes from Gibson.
Yeah, absolutely. The take on it, and this is not me saying this is all the videos I watch, and look, you don't know how much of that is fake news, if you want to call it that, right? But it's supposedly like a Gibson custom quality at half the price. And then then you'll have people say automatically it's made in China, it's automatically a piece of shit. That's probably not accurate, because I think probably a lot of things are made in, I mean, the company's been around quite some time making violins. They started.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, the thing of it is, 20 years ago, it was probably barefoot kids in a factory somewhere slapping together.
Yeah.
And now it's the same CNC that they're using here. So
yes, I agree with you there.
Really, what is the difference?
Hey, it's performed a hell of a lot better than that the Les Paul Special I had. So I got no complaints. What do you like best about what you do, and what's the most challenging aspect of it?
I like being responsible to myself, to my client, not having to go into an office, not sitting in a cubicle, having something to show for my work at the end of the day. It's
that go back to that tangible creation. Yeah.
And beyond that, the thing that really, sort of the existential, if you will, I'm not a musician, and I think there's probably a part of all of us that wish that we had been at one point in time, or were, or whatever.
Sure.
But what I do facilitates that. It's a real feeling, to see somebody up on stage with an instrument that you've fixed and you've brought back to life, and they're making music with it, and they're making people happy, and that is a good feeling.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And what's the most challenging part of it?
Being responsible to yourself.
Yeah.
You don't have somebody telling you what to do and when to do it, and if you're feeling lazy that day, who's going to force you? You.
Are you disciplined? Like, do you typically feel lazy a lot? Or are you pretty? I couldn't. I mean, I don't know you well, but I wouldn't think lazy's something that like
lazy. No. Yeah. I have a lot of days where I'm not feeling great. And those are times where you just push through.
Yeah.
And you force yourself, and you don't enjoy work that day, but it's got to get done.
Sure. Totally get that, man. What's the silliest request you've ever had?
I don't know that I've had a particularly silly request.
Unreasonable? Have you had any?
I've turned down quite a few jobs, converting perfectly good early 50s Les Pauls into like the burst Les Paul, you know, when it's like throwing humbuckers in and that kind of thing. You know, it's a cheap avenue to a 59 Les Paul,
Right.
but it's ruining a really great set of instruments that have qualities all on their own, which someday people will wake up to.
Yeah. So a lot of people want to modify their P90s and put PAS
Yep.
in there.
Yep.
Interesting. I'm not surprised because there's a lot of people that do that stuff. So therefore there must be a demand for it.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, you know, on an instrument that has been butchered, I have no problem with it. But if you have a pristine 1954 Les Paul, you know, just leave it.
Yeah.
Preserve it. Sell it and buy something you want. No,
Yeah.
don't screw it. Yeah.
Good for you, man. You're being a good guy about it. What's the best guitar and best sounding amp that you've either worked on or heard?
Best guitar and best amp?
Yeah.
I mean, again, I think I'll go back to my my two children, the Terry Reed and Dorothy. They're just phenomenal instruments. As far as what I've owned,
Yeah.
At one point in time, I owned a 57 Junior.
Oh man.
It was a really great instrument, and I didn't do it justice as far as utilizing it and playing it, and I sold it. Somebody offered me a price that I couldn't say no to.
Right.
So my replacement for that is a circa 2001, 2002 PV 3/4 sized Teenage Ninja Mutant Turtles print kids guitar, and it's phenomenal. I love it.
How did you even come across that? Like, did you?
I bought it for my kid, and I started playing it. My kid wants nothing to do with guitars. Whatever, but it fits me great. It sounds fantastic. I haven't even changed pickup tuners, anything on it. It's wonderful.
That's amazing.
Love it.
Is it? You think there's gonna be a run on these now?
Not a chance. Not a chance.
Joel, give me your top. I'm sorry. What were you gonna say?
No, I mean, as far as amps, I like anything Tweed. You know, like Fender Tweed stuff. It suits me.
I think those are the most popular amps. The
well,
Lions.
That Marshalls for sure. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I think Tweeds are a little more popular for whatever reason.
They've certainly come into their own in recent years. You know, back in the day, all you saw were Marshall stacks. But yeah.
Top 3 Desert Island discs. No particular order, just for right now.
See, I've seen enough of these. Like every time you ask that question, I run through it in my head. What would I pick?
So you have the answer.
Like everyone else says, it's an impossible question. I would have to pick something classical. I grew up, you know, maybe Bach or Rachmaninoff, something like that. Something from the blues genre.
Like,
I mean,
Freddie King, Mike Bloomfield, Roy Buchanan, like that far back or even further back, or?
I think I'd probably have to go with B.B. King.
Okay.
I mean, there's so many great players. I honestly feel bad kind of just picking one, but beyond the music, he as a person was just, you know, something else. Really admire him. I don't know, something from my youth growing up, something I was a fan of. I don't know, Guns N' Roses, Jane's Addiction, Fugazi. I don't know, something like that.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Tell me about one or two things you did or one or two changes you've made that have had the biggest impact on your life.
I don't honestly know. I think at some point during my very long and very nasty divorce.
Is there any other?
Some are worse than others, evidently, but yeah, none of them sound fun.
Yeah.
Without getting, too deep into it, I wasn't able to see my son for a long time.
Yeah.
And I think that sort of realigned my priorities. What's important, what's not.
Yeah, man, I feel you on
that. So yeah, just trying to focus on the important shit and letting the other stuff go.
Yeah. Yeah. Unfortunately, you really got to get your ass kicked to.
That is the truth.
You figure that stuff out. What makes you happy?
Making other people happy.
And what do you like most about yourself?
Oh, I don't know. I think that I'm honest. I don't think there's enough honesty in the world. So we'll go with that.
Very cool. Most important thing that you learned from your dad?
He taught me a lot of things. Yeah. I think looking at the world in a broader way, broader perspective, culturally, news, just kind of everything, not being so focused on maybe just the US, maybe just myself, my circle of friends, looking at things from a broader perspective.
Because of how he grew up overseas and all his experience. Yeah, that's really cool. Then that's the one of the things that's related to that people have always told me is if you want to broaden your horizon, travel.
Yeah.
So I think that's what I always hear. How about your mom? Most important thing she taught you?
My mom is an incredibly hard worker and just the toughest person you will ever meet. In terms of character, not meanness or anything like that. She's sweet. So yeah, she's been a very good role model from that point of view.
Awesome. Do you have any hobbies outside of what you do? Luthier guitar.
I have a lift in the garage, and I work on the occasional car. My taste in cars far exceeds my ability to purchase them in good condition.
Sure.
So I definitely buy the beat up car and fix it up and drive it around for a while and sell it.
So you buy the Epiphone of cars, if I may.
Oh, I buy the I buy the vintage Gibson that has the broken headstock and the humbuckers missing and shit like that, and fix it up.
Your same philosophy. Good for you.
Yeah, yeah. So I've been able to enjoy a few nice cars that I would not have in any other world been able to own.
That's
so
awesome.
It's been fun. Yeah.
That's very cool. Most important lesson life has taught you.
There's too many lists. Just, I think more often than not is just get over yourself. You know, don't. The world does not revolve around you.
Dude, ain't that the truth? You don't learn that till you're not 50 yet. You learned it ahead of time. Good for you.
I've had a few bumps along the way to help me there, but
I hear you. The world doesn't revolve around you. That is so true, man. Last question. Biggest change, Joel, in your personality over the last 10 years, and how much of that change has been intentional and how much is just a natural part of aging?
I don't know if this is a good thing or not. I think I've kind of learned, I mean, for so much of my life, there was not an argument I would concede. There was not a fight I would not, run into, so to speak. Not necessarily physical, but you know what I mean.
Being right was important.
Yes. And I think I've reached a point in life where you have to know when to just say, fuck it, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some principles, obviously, I'll never cross, but it's being right is a friend of mine has a very good saying. It's like, you can be right or you can be happy, but you can't be both.
Very true.
And it is true more often than not. And I think I'm slowly learning just to suck up the ego a little bit and, let it go.
Good for you, man. It's interesting that you say that. I was at a meeting, it's a Narnon meeting, maybe 12 or 13 years ago. And I was always the person I wanted to be right, not for ego, but it was important to me to be accurate, sort of.
Mm-hmm.
And they read a passage, and the first thing they said was, what's so important about being right? And man, it was the right message at the right time. And I heard that, and it literally changed my life, because I was like, yeah, why do I give a shit? And it changed my whole dynamics of my relationship with my wife. I mean, I don't care about that. That's not on the radar ever. And it really made our relationship much, as it relates to that, there's confrontation lists,
Yeah.
I'm not look, we were like everybody else, you get ups and downs, but that really relieved a significant stress that I was causing, and so
I can imagine.
I totally get that, man. Yeah, that's a huge game changer. It was for me too. I want to promote stuff, but I have nothing to promote with Joel Sword. So I would love, first want to say thank you very much for everything. I really appreciate you putting all this great information together so I could, put it out to my listeners. I appreciate you as a human being, man. You're my hero. I mean that. And I really have so much respect for you, man. It was really nice to talk with you. And thanks for always listening to the show. I don't know how you've listened to me for so many episodes. I couldn't listen to me that much. Joel's going to be having, and I do want to talk about this with you for a minute. He's coming out with some pickups next year. So I would love everybody to follow him on his Instagram, which is jw.restoration for Joel Wilkens .restoration. And also his website is jwrestoration.com. I'm assuming once these things start populating, he will be talking about it in those places. But you want to like share anything of what your plans are, or what's going through your mind, if you have any, or what's motivating you?
I'm looking to simplify my life and focus on some different things, and restoration of these instruments is sort of all encompassing. So I'm sort of phasing that out, and still need to make some money and interact with the community and whatever, and make some pickups. And I'd like to think I'm pretty decent at this point. And, spend more time with the kid, my mom, that kind of stuff.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, if you put the same personal pride that you take in your business and that stuff is usually not negotiable. It's like being pregnant. You either are or you're not. You're not like you have a great work ethic with restoration, but you're going to shit the bed with pickups. It's not really going to happen. So I'm excited to see what you come up with and what you're coming out with. And I hope everybody else will keep an eye on it too. Any final words of wisdom?
Oh God.
That could be one of them.
Yeah. Nah, I'm the last person to take advice from, honestly. It's life is tricky, and we all got to find our own way. So good luck.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate it. Thanks very much for everything. And I will look forward to talking with you again. Hang on and let me wrap this up. Everybody, thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this, share it on your proverbial social media channels. We appreciate your support. Thanks very much to Joel Wilkens again. Follow him on Instagram. He puts some cool stuff up there. Not always guitar related as well, but his guitar stuff is like guitar porn. It really is. It's jw.restoration and jwrestoration.com. And most important, remember that happiness is a choice. So choose wisely. Be nice, go play your guitar, and have fun. Till next time, peace and love, everybody. I am out. Joel, thank you for everything, brother.
Thank you, sir.